Okay, so today's webinar is all about the complete drive. So we've been doing each of the 8 directions of the 4 instinctive drives. We've done verify and avoid verify. We've done authenticate and avoid authenticate. Today we're doing the complete drive. I will mention to you that for those of you who were on the call last week when we were doing the avoid authenticate drive, I hung up from that call and I was not happy with, I was happy with the call and everything that we covered. But there was something not comfortable for me about the authenticate drive and the notion of genius for that drive. And so I rang a person on this call, Greg Meyer, a good friend of mine. Greg's been involved with me and ID for the last 20 or so years. And I said, Greg, I'm not happy. I don't think we've nailed it. And we worked through the finessing to uncover what were ultimately, and the minute we came up with it, it was like, yes, this is it. So I've recorded that conversation. And later today, we're going to publish that onto our website and it'll be on YouTube as well. And you can go in and listen to it. And those of you who are authenticators, you are going to love what we came up with. It is really, well, what did you think, Greg? You're on mute, but what did it mean for you when we came up with that? You're on mute, Greg.
I think you're setting us up here. I thought it was pretty good. I really did. I was sharing it with some people, but I'm curious to see what other high authenticates think.
Well, they haven't seen it yet, but we can maybe ask them next week when we're on the call. It'll be posted
that's what I mean.
Today.
Yeah.
So, no, thank you, Greg. Thanks for helping me with that. There's, you just know when you know, and I could just, as valuable as some of those insights were previously, I knew we weren't. I guess the truth for me was we weren't honoring the drive the way I knew it needed to be honored. And when we went back and discussed it, man, I was very happy with what we came up with. So we'll see that later today. So today we're going to talk about the complete drive. And just to set the scene, let me just share my slides. So hopefully you'll see this. Oops. Here we go. So just showing the culture of the group, it's very similar. We've got a very good, can you see my screen? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. We've got a similar cross section to previous weeks. Good representation of all 4 drives, nothing really I would call out. For those who are new to this call, this is just a protocol that for those of us who work with ID all the time, we virtually don't have a conversation without understanding the person's ID, or in the case of a group, the group or the team's ID. So we have a sense of the culture. And here, of course, you can see we've got good representation of all 4 drives. There might be times where we get, in other teams, a strong, bless you, Judy, a strong orientation, or dominance of one or more particular drives. And that would then cause us to adjust how we present to the group. So the second protocol that we always start with, and frankly, I start my day with this, is what is my peak performance indicator today? On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being you being totally in stride, shining at your best, what's your number? And, a 1 out of 10 is where you struggle to get out of bed, and a 10 out of 10 is you're so on fire, you do whatever you're doing today, whether you're getting paid for it or not. And I think it's just really good to not only check in with yourself and know what your number is, but know what it takes to get your number up at least to 8 or above. 8 and above is where you want to be as a leader. And so this green line here represents your ID. And when you're in stride with that green line, your ID, you get the things at the top of the chart. That's when you give your very best performance, have your best energy, have the greatest sense of achievement, have great health. We're not born to be sick, we're born to be healthy, and have great energy. That's why you can work, or be doing something for 18 hours, but if you're in stride, you feel like you can do it forever. And there's other times you could be in a meeting for 20 minutes and you're so out of stride, you can be totally exhausted. So it's all about learning what does in stride look like for you, and then checking yourself to know, when are you in or out of stride. They say a rocket ship spends 90% of its time off target, and the astronauts are just getting it back on track all the time. And so to me, the more frequently you check in on this, the more likely you are to live a life of real abundance and fulfillment. And to me, or for me, it's something I do every day. Even today, when I was getting dressed, I'm like, okay, what clothes do I need to wear today so that I feel at my very best? Not just for this webinar, but the whole day. Why would you want to live a day anything less? So I would just commend you to, either take a screenshot of this and pin it up somewhere where you can ask yourself this question. but check yourself every day to know and get familiar with what works for you and what we also call your early warning signals. That what are the things that start to show up when you're being pulled out of stride? Is it like swearing? Is it that you're starting to get a cold? Like for me, if I sneeze twice, I just know it's the sign that my immunity is down and I need to do something to course correct. And it happened to me about 3 days ago. And I have a vitamin C dosage that I know works for me. I take it and I'm good. If I get stuck, I know I'm going to go downhill. So understanding yourself that way is what it takes to, really live at your best. And maybe I sound fanatical, but again, maybe that's what it takes, is to be on track with that all the time. I think I've told some of you the story of my Hapkido instructor who said, when I sort of, not accused him, but, complained and said, it's all right for you, Scott. You never have to think about it. It's second nature to you. And he said, no, Paul, on the contrary, I never stop thinking about it. And I guess that's me and, what I do here. So I just commend this to you for how you could start your day and start a meeting, start anything you're going to be doing so that you're always in stride. All right. So today we're going to talk about the instinct to complete. And I thought I'd just show you, it sometimes helps to understand both sides. So I'm just going to give you a quick intro to both sides so that it then helps maybe highlight the instinct to complete. And there are a number of dimensions on which we can explain this. So if, we can talk about it in the context of energy. We can talk about it in the context of just the picture of what you see. So I thought I'd cover both with you. So the first is that energy for a completer, energy builds over time. So the more you're involved with something, the more momentum you build, the more progress you feel you're making, the more your enthusiasm builds up. And that's one of the reasons why you hate interruptions so much, is that you get on a roll, as you say, and that's when you really start to shine. Your productivity starts to go through the roof. It's like a semi-trailer that builds up through the gears. And the last thing you want is an intersection. There's something that slows you right back down to zero when you're on this roll. So that's the mindset of a completer. Having everything, work in harmony and integrated. I used the picture of a jigsaw puzzle. I had it here to show you, if you want a mental picture of the complete drive, think of the completer being the jigsaw puzzle. Everything's got to fit together. And when I say everything, I'm talking about not just the picture of what you've got on today, but the past, the present, the future. Everything about today, from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, everything from the past into today and beyond today. So that's why things like leaving a legacy is really important to a completer, because it's how you take the today and extend that into the tomorrow. So the context of time is really a big driver for the completer, both from the past, present, future, but also anticipating, recalling the past into today and anticipating the future back into today. Having all of that work in harmony is the drive and the need of the complete instinct. This little red piece here of the jigsaw puzzle is probably a good way to think about the avoid complete drive, because the avoid complete drive is all about the exception. The one thing. Let's just focus on that thing, get that done. We'll worry about the rest of it, the rest of the jigsaw puzzle, when and if we get there. But we're not going to worry about it today, because a part of that jigsaw puzzle is not just what you've got on and what is real. It's also all the contingencies, all of what might happen, the what ifs, not just the reality of what will. It's the whole picture. And then how you fit into that. Where are you as one piece of that jigsaw puzzle? Where are you in that picture? And ultimately you want to be in harmony, and you want the whole picture to be in harmony. For those of you who are completers, one of the things to think about is that often you will put yourselves into disharmony in order to keep harmony for everybody else. And my question would be, how's it working for you? How does that really work when ultimately, for you to be your best self, to give to everybody else, you do have to take time to sharpen your own axe and take care of yourself and be in great shape for yourself. Having a detailed plan, so you know every step of the way and how everything's going to work. It's not just so that you can see that you're going to get there and you can know how you're going to achieve and complete, but it's also the fulfillment, the incredible fulfillment you get when you're able to tick off each of the boxes or each of the steps along the way. Nothing gives a completer more fulfillment than putting a check next to the item on the list, saying we've got that one done, and then feeling like you're making progress. And of course, having the time and the resources to ensure that when you do start something, you can see it all the way through to completion. You know, there's times in teams where we get told by the leaders, you know, but that person's not a completer. They haven't got that thing done. I'm like, they probably haven't started it, as opposed to they haven't finished it. They haven't started it because they don't have the confidence that they've got the time, or maybe it's the resources to be able to get things done. And particularly if you're working in a strong avoid complete culture, where things are typically underscoped, then of course, as a completer, you think, why would I start something? Why would I go flying a plane that's only got, you know, 10 minutes of petrol in it when the journey's going to take an hour? Why on earth would you do that? That would just be stupid or fatal. And it typically is in the mind of a completer. They work and live in teams and groups where they think, you know, there's so many things that we start with the wildest of enthusiasm, and yet it all just fades to zero. And it's so unfulfilling to a completer who thrives on being able to bring everything to a conclusion. So that would be my snapshot for you on a quick intro of a completer. Are there any questions? I haven't read the chat yet, but if you put something in the chat.
I have a question. This is Polani. Hi. So the complete drive completely assumes that somebody is following the instructions to complete something. It's not a research work. It's not a design phase. So that without interruption, you just follow the instructions and get the job done without any conversation or discussion or measuring ourselves at each step, how we are doing. So that's why, like, avoiding interruption or trying to complete without interruption means that it's not being measured.
Yes, a little hard to understand you. What I can say to you is they absolutely do want the instructions. You know, the classic picture I have is when someone goes to IKEA and comes home with the flat pack, something I would probably dread myself, but you comes home with the flat pack, they would then lay everything out, they would have the instructions out, and it's not just that they follow the instructions because they, you know, want to get it right, or there's a certain fulfillment out of having it go the way the plan says it needs to go. Yeah. One of the things I was going to share with you was the story. One time I was working with this person who was a pilot. They weren't a domestic, like a commercial pilot. They were an amateur pilot, but they had an ID actually like yours, Andrea, actually 8662. And yeah, 8662. And he was saying to me, as a pilot, he said, nothing gives me more fulfillment than having a flight plan. And the flight plan says that 28 minutes into the flight, you should be flying over a lake. And I look out the window at 28 minutes and there's the lake straight underneath me. And he's like, you've got no idea of the buzz I get from having everything play out like clockwork, you know? So even when they get a fire in engine 3 or 4 and we think something's going wrong, to a completer, they go, no, I've been trained on that. I know what to do. There's instructions for that. We have a plan for that too. And they've got contingency plans for everything. That's the way a completer's mind operates. I mean, for me as a non-completer, I would feel like my head would bust to have all of that in it, but it's not, well, it's obviously the opposite for a completer. It gives tremendous fulfillment for them to operate that way.
Yeah, I have seen during trying to accomplish something, some people even not willing to disturb the existing instructions because we need to complete it on time. There may be a better way to do it, but they don't want to spend time on it because they want to complete it. So
yes,
that's why I asked.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from anybody else?
A couple of questions in the chat there, Paul, or a comment from Greg around interruptions from others.
Yeah,
they don't mind. Yeah,
I saw that.
It's a good one to call out.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, like the other weeks, if I just show you this, we have a template. I was going to show you something. There's a picture. When talking a picture, I was really this means a lot to me to show you this picture. So when I was before I even began developing the ID, one of the pictures that has to do with the complete drive that was the instigator for me even realizing there might be something instinctive in people was this picture right here. And some of you might recall this picture. This is a kite drawn by my daughter, Laura. And actually, if you look behind me, that's the picture I've got there in my office, which I just pulled out from the wrapping earlier today when we moved office. I had it all wrapped up and I thought, oh, I want to show you this picture of the kite. So when Laura was about 4, and this is before I got into ID, she was colouring in or drawing and colouring this kite. And she had all of her pencils lined up, the colour pencils all lined up to colour in this kite. And I thought I'd be a good daddy and come over and start colouring in with my daughter. So I came over and picked up any colour and went to colouring one of these little diamonds on the tail. And she went, Dad, you're doing it wrong. And I'm like, wrong? How could I be doing it wrong? I'm the adult here. And she said, it's out of order. And I would say she was colouring in from the top of the bottom of the kite here. I was colouring in from the other end. And I'm like, how did you instinctively know it was out of order? Like, she didn't go red, orange, purple, green. You know, she didn't look at that order. She just instinctively knew it was wrong. And I'm like, what was that? Because it happened in a nanosecond. It wasn't just that it was the wrong color. It was the wrong, it was like the wrong color from an order that she couldn't have mathematically calculated. And I was like, what was that? There was something in that moment that happened in me that made me think there's something inside people from the get-go that is instinctive. And it was that element of the complete drive was the very first clue that triggered me to, you know, go on my exploration. So I wanted to show you that picture, you know, and I'm obviously, it's very sentimental to me to have this kite. Still got the original picture and had it blown up and put it in our office, and I just have it here now with me. So that might also be another picture that you might want to keep in mind. And it's I think it helps really explain the way the mindset of a completer really does work. Okay, so in terms of the template, I have this template again that I've gone through, and I will talk to each of these boxes today, including your genius, the white belt and black belt level of genius of the complete drive. And this is really important too, this bottom piece about what shows up when you do as a completer. And as we've mentioned before, even if the complete drive is not your particular instinct,
Hello, what happened?
We've lost Paul's audio.
I cannot hear you.
I don't know can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey,
that was weird. Everything just stopped. So,
hey,
okay.
Paul, can you go to your slide one before the kite?
Hang on a second. Do you have a question?
I just want to share something.
Okay, I'm showing the slide. What is it you'd like to share?
I don't see it.
Assume it's there. What would you like to share?
So if you look at the bottom picture, I remember the red color puzzle piece is alone, like separate. Most of the time, you are the missing piece, not the team. So.
Okay.
You understand
I'm sorry for my slides. I don't know what happened. I'm just resharing them.
Okay.
Hopefully you see them in a second. So you said as a completer, most of the time you're a missing piece, not the other people?
No, what I'm saying is, yeah, most of the time you are the missing piece than the others in the team. Well,
it can feel like that's a fair comment, given a lot of the business teams we work with, there's a strong dominance of avoid complete. So that's exactly right. The very person that wants to fit in and have harmony is often the person that feels the exception to the group. And of course, that's at odds with the way you're wired. That's a great call out, Palani. Very good call out. And of course, to even talk up and make your point and be assertive about it is a challenge, because you don't want to be the person with the abnormal view. You want to be the normal one, the one that's thinking and operating similar to each of the others. So that's a really good point. Often the very thing that you want is denied you by the nature of the team that you belong to. And that is why there are people that say, you know, I used to work for a big corporate And I was just like a number, and I felt so insignificant, like an irrelevant piece of the jigsaw puzzle. I'd rather go to a different environment where they're more structured, more organized, where I'm more significant and I'm able to have a more, relevant influence on the bigger jigsaw puzzle, including, not being so abnormal to everybody else. Often for a completer, smaller is more beautiful. Okay, so with that, let me start going through some of the key elements of today. I'll just stop sharing and come back to the larger screen. So let's talk about motivation and what completers need to motivate themselves. And I'm going to put some of this just in view of the time. I'm going to sort of bump some of these together. But if you think about a completer as needing the whole plan and then needing to get on a roll, one of the most important things for a completer is how they get started in the day. So often if it's say Thursday, say this week's going crap, the mind of a completer thinks, what's the point of bothering about Friday? In Australia, it's Thursday today. I'll just wait till Monday and I'll start off a fresh week then, because they'd rather start and have everything clean. So when you are a completer and you want to live your best day, what you want to do is set the alarm clock, and if you can even get up a little ahead of that so that you feel that you're on top of your day and ahead of the game, that's a massive motivator for a completer. Then if you've got a little routine for how you start your day, it might be the first thing you do is get up and go and make yourself a coffee. And let's say you went downstairs to make yourself a coffee and the coffee machine wasn't working, that could essentially bugger up your whole day, because the routine of how you get started isn't going the way that you planned it to go and the way that it normally goes. Whatever that routine is, you need to be true to that every day. And what I've found is that even when you come into your workplace, now it might be different as you're working from home, there's a little routine. We call it getting settled. Whatever you need to do to get settled and just get yourself set up for the day, it's about a 20-minute routine is what we've heard from people. Whatever that is, honor that and tell the people around you, this is what you need. So when you see me walk through the door and you think I've arrived, I'm not actually here. I'm still to go through, the setup stage. And once I've done that, might be I've gone and made myself another coffee, I've gone to the restroom, I've checked my emails, and now I'm ready to start. And if you get to do that, you almost feel like you can be invincible for the day. But that is a critical ritual that a completer needs to honor, and those around you need to help them honor that if you want to really extract the best out of yourself or out of the completers that you live with or work with. Maybe a completer might want to speak to that on the call if you can see that that's true for you.
Well, I will speak to this a little bit, Paul, because for me, of course, the complete drive is my strongest drive. And so some mornings, and I've gone over that getting settled part many times, but sometimes I want to get into being productive as soon as I can, and even brushing my teeth, putting in my contacts, taking a shower is like, I don't want to do that. I want to get in here. I want to be productive. And so I have wrestled a little bit with that, with the idea of getting settled, because I was thinking that, getting settled was doing all these things that I just described. And some days I just want to get productive. And so it's an interruption.
So how's that work for you, Judy, when you don't do the normal getting settled piece and get straight into the things that make you productive, or, quote unquote, how does that work for you? Does it work?
Well, no, I say, Judy, if you don't brush your teeth and you don't put in your contacts, you're not worth a darn. So
you raise a brilliant point, Judy, which is, it's one thing to know yourself. The bigger challenge is to accept yourself and be then true to that. I find that to be one of the bigger challenges. Just because people learn about their ID doesn't mean that it automatically removes the voices in your head that might be coming from parents or, you know, life that are saying, but the better way to do things is this, that it's more productive to just get straight into the other work. I just saw one of the comments where someone said, I make my bed first, you know, and that's like, it's a way of both being productive and starting to feel like you're getting your day off on the right foot. And it just gets you, on that roll that you need to be on. If you don't, you pay a price. Now, what's important as a completer and for all of us to understand is that it's as you go up through the gears, your productivity increases exponentially. So although you might feel like you're delaying the start of your day duty by doing these other smaller things and getting settled, and you know, you might think you're wasting time, what will actually happen is when you get up on a roll, then you will you'll start to get through, you know, 10 times what you would have gotten through had you not honored that routine, you know. So it is worth it to go through your little getting settled routine for what's going to happen when you get into your 5th or 6th gear and you are really churning through the work. Then you will be super productive then.
And I've experienced that. It's when my mind argues with what I know that what we're talking about is the best. And my mind says, because I get such a high from the results, from the productivity. I mean, I just experienced that yesterday afternoon, and it was amazing.
Right. I've worked with elite athletes who something's gone wrong. They've run late from, you know, something wrong with their car. And when they get to the dressing shed, they can't, you know, for a football game, they can't do the normal routine that they would normally do to get ready for a game, and they play terribly, you know. So it's just a significant component of what makes a completer tick. I'm going to address some of the questions you guys are raising in the chat because they're provoking some really funny stories for me. When one of them, you know, someone might ask the question with Kathy, 7472 said, I can't do spontaneous. You remind me of a story. I went on a holiday one time with my kids, and I'm an avoid completer, as are my, you know, couple of my kids. And anyway, so I said, we're going to do this holiday where we have no idea where we're going. And we literally turned out of the street and I said, do we go left or do we go right? It was a driving holiday and there was absolutely no plan. And in my head, there was truly no plan. We would just book the accommodation wherever we landed for the day. And it was a totally spontaneous trip. And we had the time of our lives. We ended up all over the place and it was fun as hell. And so my beautiful stepdaughter, who some of you know passed away last year, Shan, she was a strong completer and it sounded really fun for her. And so she said, I'm going to do that holiday too. And she started off with her husband. They drove out of the street. And she said, so do we turn left or right? And they started going wherever they were going. She said, the stress of this, I can't do this. And they stopped and planned out the rest of their trip. You know, they just couldn't do it without having that plan. Now, I just share that for the fun side of, you know, the spontaneity. It is possible that if your plan is to have no plan, and I've had people say that, you know, this Saturday, we've got nothing on. We've got no plan. We're just going to have a chill day and just deal with whatever happens. And if that's the plan, then that is possible for a completer to, you know, to just embrace a day like that. But there wouldn't be many days that have like that. The more fulfilling days are checking that list off. And when you've got lots of things, I would say one of the key components for a completer is to be busy. And when you are busy, you know, that's what makes you shine. But it is possible, and I have had it happen in my life where people have just said, let's plan to do nothing. And nothing is what they did. And when they get interrupted from doing nothing, it's really annoying because that wasn't the plan. So
quick question, actually, if it's okay. So I'm really trying to figure out my idea right now. So I hate to put the focus on me, but Paul, maybe you can help me out. So as we've been going in the chat section, people have been talking about being spontaneous or talking about the plan and needing to complete something. And for me, at least, maybe it's just because of the combination of my ID, but nothing brings me greater joy than when someone hits me up on text or whatever and says, hey, let's go do this. And it's like, yes, please, let's go. Like I get so much enthusiasm from somebody else initiating something or putting in that spontaneity. Or if I'm out with friends, maybe it's we're, I don't know, already out doing something. And it's like, hey, I know we're going to go do this today, but actually I want to go do that. To me, my first reaction is like, heck yes, let's go. So I'm wondering, is that just because other parts of my ID are playing into it? Because I feel like there's some people who are like kind of nodding like, yeah, and then other people are looking at me like I'm freaking crazy. So I don't know, maybe you can shed some light on that.
I love a challenge. So the first thing I would say to you is that's unusual for your ID. You know, that it normally it would be the opposite, where you go, oh, you know, I thought we were going to be doing something else, and it is like an interruption. So firstly, I think it's a great trait that you're embracing the spontaneity. I would ask you, I mean, you've got a stronger drive, which is the avoid improvise drive. And it's something, maybe it's something to do with avoiding risk. So it might be avoiding the risk of missing out on fun, or of not being cool in the group, or of not being a spontaneous person. Maybe you've attached some sort of value to that. I don't know. It might be something along those lines. What do you think it is when you think of it from the point of view of either how you fit in, because a completer is all about how you fit in, or avoiding a risk? What comes up for you around that?
I think if anything, it's just relief. I don't have to plan everything, because that's usually what I get stuck with. So maybe it's that. Maybe I just have people around me that just assume I'm going to plan everything. And I'm always the one that has to make the decisions. Or I was joking about with somebody else, like I'm always the first one who's like, all right, we're going to jump off the cliff. And everyone's like, wait. And I'm like, it's fine. I already figured it out. Don't worry. So maybe it's just like the relief of having somebody else like step into that role. So that way it's like the burden of responsibility is like off.
Yeah. If I can jump in there, Paul, I was just thinking about Michelle, a good friend and colleague of ours, and she's 8571.
Yeah.
And I could completely see her in what you've described there. And there's something about, so number one, yes, she's often the person that does all the hard work. So she's in terms of planning. And so she's always absolutely delighted when someone else does it. But also, and it's something I think comes up with that sort of intensity. And I think you're thinking of your two in improvise, and you know, she's a one, is that there's somehow she is able to calculate so quickly whether, you know, you can fit that into your life schedule, how it affects everything else, because you're so across what your plans are and everything, that it's just a heartbeat of a moment to go, yeah, I can do that. But it's something that's so sort of subconscious in terms of how quickly that happens. And so the behavior, you know, is very spontaneous.
Well, it looks spontaneous.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'll have to try it out. I'll try to reflect on it. That's some really good insight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Krista. I would say don't let go of this too quickly, Andy, because there's probably something really profound in this for you. Like, it's a really cool attribute of your makeup that you are acting so spontaneously with that ID. So it'd be really cool to understand what's behind that, because it's not consistent with how you would, you know, how someone with your ID would normally present and operate. And it's not that anything's wrong or that your ID is wrong or you're not in stride. There's something deeper that's maybe defining what risk means to you, what normal means to you. It might have been that, for example, if you grew up in a family of really entrepreneurial, spontaneous, flexible people, maybe that's your normal. And, you know, it doesn't feel so out of step with how everyone operates. I'm not sure. But if we were to delve into that a little deeper than probably is realistic on this call today, then we would uncover something where we go, oh my God, that's really, you know, an epiphany of like what risk means to me and how you're designing your life. So I'd say stay with that a little bit, because it's a very cool trait. It's also a great lesson for the rest of us that people's IDs are not their behaviors. And just because someone has an ID, don't jump to a conclusion that they can or can't or will or won't do certain things, because here's a great example in Andy, who not only is doing things really different to what her ID looks like, but who would probably hate being, you know, thought of as, well, don't give that to her because she's not going to want to deal with something spontaneously, whereas he's someone who thrives on it. So, you know, the only way you get to know that is to get close to somebody and understand what they mean by, you know, complete or risk, or what, you know, their definition of things.
Hey, Paul, just quickly, one thing Andy might want to do is find the times when you're not so thrilled with the interruption, when the spontaneity is like really interrupting your plans and you haven't had time to tuck it in, like Krista said, and you'll get a clue as to whether you're actually loving the spontaneity or whether it's fitting in already with what you in your mind have set unconsciously to do. And when you can see when it really sort of pisses you off, there's going to be some insights on some different strategies. Then I'm worried with your 7-2, you think to yourself, I'm a spontaneous, person. When you're true to yourself, it's actually that it all fits together. It's not that it's spontaneity is not the issue really. It's its fittingness.
Yeah, and like not to be like an armchair therapist and jump in here, but I'm going to jump in here anyway. It might be the difference between means and ends. Like, I mean, the means to, like, for instance, you may see the end as I want to just hang out with my friends and whatever does that suffices. And the means is whatever the friends want to do. And so being out there with your friends and your friends are like, oh, I want to go jump off that cliff. And you're like, huh, that's a pretty cool cliff. I'll go run to that one. It's because it just satisfies the end goal of being with friends. At least that's the one way I might see it. And whatever that plan is, you might just be like, oh yeah, that's a good enough plan. Sure, let's go. And then you go yeet yourself off a cliff. That's my 3 cents on the matter.
We're taking my cliff jumping example very seriously on this call, but yes.
One of the things
as the 2 might suggest, it's done very safely, everybody. It's like no more than like 10 feet jumping into a lake.
That's very cool. I think you know your ID pretty well, Andy. One of the things I hope is coming out of this discussion so far is when people first see the idea and they see the word complete, they immediately think finish. It's the instinct to finish things. And of course, there are many completers who don't finish a lot of things. And there are plenty of avoid completes who do finish things. So we don't use the word complete in the context of finishing or starting, even though that's a dimension to it. It's used in the context of looking at the complete picture, the whole, W-H-O-L-E. And that's really that more complete jigsaw puzzle of how everything fits together in the whole and the harmony of all of those pieces integrating perfectly together. That's the real concept and picture to have of this complete drive. And then keeping them like that all the way through. So let me jump to a couple of points. The time today seems to be escaping us really quickly, and there's a lot of chat going on that keep that going, and I'll try and keep my eye on it and jump to some of the important comments that you make. But I can see you're all helping each other too, which is a really wonderful spirit of the people on this call. But I want to talk about the concept of genius with the complete drive. I might pull out some other components as well. So let's talk about the first.
Sorry to interrupt. You were talking about motivation. What motivates your completion?
Yes, I was. Thank you.
Okay.
So really, it's about having, to finish that on motivation, it's around having a plan, getting settled, seeing that you can, get settled and organized and get on that roll with the plan. What motivates you is knowing that there's the time, the energy, the resources to follow through and see it through to completion. If you can see that that's going to be possible, and you start checking off the boxes along the way, checking those boxes off is a massive source of motivation. So I'd say to a completer, if you're sort of procrastinating and you want to get started, start on the smaller things. Even if they're not that big a priority, start on the things you can actually check off first, like finish first, little things, because as you start to get on a roll, you might feel like you're not doing the right things or the important things, but as you start to get them checked off, your motivation increases, which equals your confidence increases, and you then be more willing and capable to tackle some of the more challenging issues, and you'll do them much more in stride that way. I think there's also some key words and sort of scenarios that get you motivated. One of the best ones is the concept of things being a mess. If you use the word mess with a completer, I often use the concept there's like a little gremlin, like a little Shrek character inside us, and it only speaks the language of our ID. And if you're a completer, that little gremlin, that little Shrek is asleep. And the minute it hears the word mess, it's like, whoa, I'm on. What's my role? What have I got to do? Because it just thrives on taking a mess and getting that all organized. So if I was wanting to get the attention of a completer, if I said, I don't know, I just feel that this is a complete mess, like game on, they're engaged, they want to play, there's a role for them to help sort it out. So what I try, if I had something I needed attention to and the person's a completer, I will just find a way to put the word mess in there and it just gets the engagement and the action that's needed. It's an incredibly powerful word for invoking or motivating that complete drive. The second word that has the equivalent effect from an emotional point of view is the word upset. Completers hate thinking that anyone around them is upset, because it's the opposite to harmony. So if you use the word, like if I said, oh, I don't know, I'm not in harmony, that doesn't really do a whole lot. But if you use the word upset, like this really upsets me, I feel really upset right now, that is like, you know, waving 50 red flags to the bull. It's like it's got to engage then. So mess and upset are two key words that absolutely invoke the energy of the completer. Okay, I'm going to come back to some of the other areas, but I know a lot of you are very interested in this whole genius idea, and I want to make sure we've got time to cover that. So in terms of the white belt level of genius, when you think about that, so this is really, what is it that you do that doesn't probably feel that extraordinary to you, but it's something you do consistently, and it's not the world of everybody else? I'd say it's your ability to recall and forecast. Those two, so going back in time, going forward in time, those two things that you might just think of as, you know, well, isn't it just a good memory? Can't everyone remember? Yep, we can all remember, you know, for the most part, we can remember. But can we remember everything all the time in the sequence and order that things occurred? Nope. That is the domain of an avoid completer. And can we forecast? Yep, I can plan ahead. But will I do it accurately? Will I cover everything? Will I have everything in order? No. So as an example, if we're going away on holidays, for example, we being anyone on this call, if a completer is going on holidays, they're thinking, well, I've got to fit my luggage into this suitcase, and they will be planning for probably the week in advance on what they're going to take and what's going to be clean and not clean and what they're going to need once they're there and so on. Not only what they will take, but what they might need, just in case we get asked to go out for dinner, or just in case there's a black tie event, or just in case something breaks. I've got, you know, and just in case my luggage gets stuck on the plane, I've got something in my hand luggage that can get me through for the first 24 hours, just in case, because that's all part of the plan. But then when they pack the suitcase, the things they're most likely going to need first are what's on top of the suitcase rather than at the bottom. So those of us who are avoid completers who think we can pack really well, yep, and you can anticipate, yep. But did you then pack the suitcase in a way that had everything you need first on top? You know, there's so many elements to the whole jigsaw puzzle that a completer doesn't think about. This is instinctive to a completer. It's almost like, is there any other way to do it? That just comes normally to them. If they were designing their kitchen, it would be all, you know, what goes in what cupboards and what drawers is all based on the functionality of how quickly they might need to draw on things. And it's, you know, there's a method to the madness in everything that a completer does. So this ability to just look back and recall, or look forward and forecast and have everything in its order, is an incredible gift. And I think it's firstly undervalued by the non-completes, the avoid completes, and it's particularly undervalued by the completers themselves, who think that it's more memory and it's something, you know, really it's not that exceptional because everyone else can do it. But in a team or even in a family, you know, that's why you are the guys that will keep those traditions alive, that become, over the course of time, they become so important to a family that, you know, kids don't know that, you know, having something every Sunday, whether it's a baked dinner or a certain ritual in the family, or a, you know, a certain thing you do each year at Christmas, or a way that you do the Christmas tree together, they might be complaining about it. And then years later, they're like, well, we always did this, and this is what makes our family. And it's part of the legacy value that everyone takes with them. Those little rituals and traditions, and that where you bring history all the way through, and you just don't forget it, and you make sure it happens, and you go out of your way to organize things so that everyone can still be a part to that. You know, that's just an incredible gift that you bring, and you do it without thinking. It's just what comes naturally to you. And I think that's just good for all of us to know, you know, the uniqueness of that and the profoundness of that element of the complete drive. Huge. I think there's many teams where completers, you know, save so much reinvention because I go, but hang on, we did that 2 years ago. Don't you remember? And they not only know the work that was done, they know where it's been stored. You know, they can remember what it was called. There's this sense of memory, but it's recall of being able to join all the dots and go back and find that work and bring it forward into today. On the contrary, I know there are avoid completers that can say, you know, I struggle to remember the birth of some of my children. Like I can remember they were born and I can remember that I was there, but if you asked me all the detail about it, it makes me question whether I'm a good parent. And when they've done their ID and they find out they're an avoid completer, they go, so is this just part and parcel of how I'm wired? I'm like, absolutely. I mean, it's just, there's no guilt. You don't need to carry any guilt. It's just who you are. And whether it's, you know, things about their wedding day or the birth of their children or other important events, you know, when you can't remember all the detail, you can be left feeling like, well, maybe it wasn't that important to you. No, it was important to you. It's just not your gift to remember and recall all of the ability. I remember when Laura was about 18 months old, we went to some hotel. So Laura's a 7 incomplete. And about 18 months later, we went back and she was so little that we wouldn't have thought she could remember. And she said, she's in the back of the car and she goes, oh yeah, this hotel, we've been there before. And I'm like, no, we haven't. And then Lynn said to me, yes, we have. We've been to that hotel. And Laura had said, yeah, room 16, that room up there. And I'm like, how did you know that? You know, it's just a gift to start. Once you get the first piece of the jigsaw puzzle, all of a sudden your mind instinctively puts together all the other parts of the jigsaw puzzle, including, yeah, I was wearing this and we met so-and-so, and then we went and did, you know, something else. The whole picture comes back together. That's what I'm talking about with the recall ability of the completer.
Hey,
So if that, go on, sorry.
Can I say something?
Palani, yes.
Yeah, so you just touched the one important quality of a completer, in my opinion, is they're already a busy people. So they're able to do or remember things because they're always busy on doing whatever they like. So something you talk about later on and during discussion, they might have already done it because they're hard workers and they make punctuality. And she mentioned like brushing is like a warm-up. So they cannot be like a white completer, or they cannot be lazy because as the proverb says, if you want something to be completed, you always give it to a busy person, not a non-busy person. So that's why the completer is always completes this.
Well, of course, the thing with the complete drive is there are many completers who don't get everything done. And the question is, it's not that they're not a completer. You've got to then say, well, are they out of stride, and what level of stress are they carrying because of that? And of course, that's really true for a lot of completers.
That means
jumping, Kalani, because I've got some questions I know other people have asked, including, and I will come to the black belt piece in a minute. But Judy, you asked a question earlier, which I want to make sure we have time to honor, which was, what happens when, you might want to repeat the question for everyone else on the call, but it's like, what happens when you can't get in stride as completer?
Yes, and that's what often gets in my way. If I get sick, and I just am coming out of that kind of situation. I had a lot of activity and stress, and then I got sick, and I couldn't move on. I couldn't get clarity. I couldn't do anything. And the more that I was sick, then the more stressed I got and the more sick I got. And it just became like a vicious circle. And,
yes,
you know, that's one thing. That's one kind of interruption, getting sick. But also if there are other players that need to connect with me so we can get something done, and if for whatever reason they're not available, that's another thing. Those two things, when either I get sick or the people that I need to help me complete something are not available.
Okay, So what I will tell you is that I had down as one of the vulnerabilities for this drive is sickness. It's the drive more vulnerable probably than any other to getting sick. Because it's if the positive of your ID is that you're the planners, the flip side of planning is worrying. So it's the drive that worries. If it can't see how it is going to be able to complete or deal with all the contingencies that can occur, then that brings a level of stress, which we would call worrying, right? So, and I have found with all the different sicknesses that I can see come about from people being in or out of stride with their ID, the one instinct that tends to get more sick than any other, and as opposed to also being injured, is the drive to complete. And I think a lot of it's because of the level of worry that you carry. You know, if I think of the completers that deal with this best, it's the planning. They just have the planning and a way of tucking in all the contingencies and then constantly replanning. They expect things to change rather than getting frustrated because they have changed. They're planning for that all the time. And I think, you know, it's going back to this point about it's one thing to know yourself and have strategies. It's another to accept this about yourself. Mm-hmm. But I would say, you know, when you're such a strong completer, Judy, and those of you like this, you really need to do constant planning and replanning to stay in stride. And when things change, so my son is a really strong completer, and one of the principles that I've tried to raise my kids on is life is perfect. If it's not going the way you plan, it's not because it's not going as it was meant to go. It's just that your plan wasn't on course. So life is perfect. If I'm driving somewhere today to get a plane, for example, and I get a flat tire and miss my plane, nothing went wrong. That was actually the plan. In terms of the universe, that was the plan. I just didn't realize it. And so when things go differently, not wrong, when things go differently to what I planned, instead of getting upset about it, you can sort of go, okay, this is interesting. This is fun. And Sam, who's an 8 incomplete, I just so admire the way he does this, because when COVID hit, he's a personal trainer and it was potentially going to completely annihilate his business. And he was like, well, Dad, I know nothing's gone wrong. It's just part of the plan. I've just got to figure out how I play in that plan. And it really puts a different spin on how it works and therefore the level of stress that comes along with that. And I would just commend that to all of you. I mean, it was, even for me as an avoid complete, it was still a huge new perspective to have, to look at life as, you know, instead of trying to make it go according to my plan, there already is a plan and I've just got to keep adjusting to accommodate it and enjoy what it throws at me. Like, you know, if someone could come along to any of us, completers or not, and say, let me show you the plan for the rest of your life so that you know it with absolute clarity and certainty, most of us wouldn't want to know that. You know, that would take all the fun out of life. But then when things happen we weren't expecting, we proceed to get super stressed by it. So I think a new way of looking at life is already perfect. Our role is to accept it and to, if we get caught with something we weren't expecting, you know, treat it as still as correct but fun, and we've just got to figure it out. Okay, let's talk about the black belt genius. There's something about design. The ability to have everything fit together and fit in is just an incredible talent of the complete drive. Like, you could be out buying furniture and someone says, well, look, I've had this happen to me where, well, that's a different green to what we've got at home, you know, and you come and I'm like, it looks the same to me. And you come home and sure enough, it's different. Or, you know, someone say, well, that won't fit in. That's too long or too short or too big, whatever. And it's like out by inches, you know. It's just remarkable to me, this sense of design of having everything coordinate and fit together. But it's not done by thinking and planning. It's instinctive. And that is an incredible gift of just being able to see how everything's going to fit together. You know, it's like there's a prediction element about it, but I'm thinking of this more from a design point of view, of just seeing how it's all going to work, you know, and fit together, right down to you don't necessarily have had to measure it all up beforehand. You just, whether it's colors or size, It just works. I've watched people packing luggage for the, you know, to put in the boot of a car or the trunk of a car, and someone goes out and starts packing it and goes, it doesn't fit. And a completer comes out and says, let me do it. And they have a way of just putting it in, and all of a sudden it not only fits, when they've finished it, there's no space left. And I'm like, how did you do that? I mean, that is a gift that I think is like really in that genius level. And that's my black belt definition for the genius of any of the drives, is the, how the hell did you do that sort of definition? You know, it's like, it's beyond the thinking of someone who doesn't have that drive. And I think that design flair that a completer has is not only misunderstood, it's often not even used. I think there's often completers who don't put that forward as to, well, let me pack the car, or let me, you know, design this, because you maybe don't think of it as that exceptional, but it truly is a magnificent gift. And I would challenge all of you to think of, how are you using that? Just because you have a talent doesn't mean you're using it. And most certainly just because you have a genius within you doesn't mean you're using it. So if you have the complete drive, then what are you doing about using either, you know, the white belt level of recall and prediction, or the black belt level about design? And it doesn't mean you've got to be an architect or, you know, interior design to use design. You could be someone who's in accounting. It's like, how am I using design? Could be in leadership. How am I using design? But just even thinking about that and bringing that into how you live your life. You know, they say that people only use their strengths 8 to 10% of the time. So even if you doubled that and took it to 20%, there's still a lot of untapped potential there. And if you're with someone who's an avoid complete, what a great discussion to have with your kids or your spouse around, well, how are you in your relationship, you know, letting that shine for them? I think that's really important. What shows up when you do, to finish off today, what shows up when you walk in the room and there's, you know, you're not doing anything, you're not saying anything, but think of it as when you walk in walks a shadow or an aura that comes with you. I would say there's a sense of calm, this sense about harmony, you know, so there's a calm that normally comes with you. If you're in stride, a completer who's out of stride and frazzled is not going to bring calm. They're going to bring chaos. So that's the flip side of what you even stand for, is what there are, you know, a number of completers can be so busy, but out of stride, that they bring, you know, this sense of frazzle and chaos to everyone else. So that's not how you want to show up. If you show up in stride by being who you are, you normally show up with being present and very nurturing and very calming. That sense of peace and calm and order is what comes with you. I would also add, what comes with you is accountability and integrity, because doing things as planned and delivering the goods, and, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, someone we know who's on this call, who just, when I think of this person, he just oozes accountability and integrity to me. And I know it embarrassed him to call him out, but he probably knows who I'm talking about.
I will.
And, yeah. But, you know, it's just what comes with you when you are showing up in stride. So the key is not to try and do anything. You don't need to be. You just need to focus on, am I in stride? On that peak performance indicator, am I an 8, 9, or 10 today? And if you are, as a completer, what will show up when you walk through the door is the integrity, the accountability, and the sense of calm and people feeling nurtured. I think it's a beautiful gift. And I'd really encourage you to stand up for that more. And those of you who have completers in your life, honor that more, and we'll all help the world be a better place. Guys, that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thanks for being on here today. Next week, we're going to cover the Avoid Complete Drive, and we're planning what we're going to do beyond when we finish the Avoid Improvise Drive. We've already got things in train to continue the series on. I'll share them with you next week. But thanks again for your time today. Have a great rest of week, and look forward to hopefully seeing you on the call again next week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye, Ian.
Cheers.